What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about a few things, and mainly just the question, should you buy an S2000? Now, I've had this car for about almost 2 years now, about a year and a half. This is my second S2000, and basically, I just got to kind of thinking, like, for me, I really like it. It's a great car, but it's also a very old car. So is this something you should still buy? And so we're just gonna kind of talk about that today. So a few things about the car. Like, let's be honest, it's an old car. Mine is a 2005, and this car at this point is 15 years old. Now, if you think about it, you're like, okay, well, 15-year-old car, pretty old, probably not worth that much, high mileage, whatever. But that's the thing, the S2000 at 15 years old. So I bought mine in 2018, and so 13 years old, and I got mine for $20,000. Now that is quite a bit of money for a car that old. And so you're kind of wondering, like, man, why is this car so expensive? Like, why is the cost so high? And for a few reasons. This car is iconic in Honda's lineup. It's a great car, but for Honda specifically, this is one of the few rear-wheel drive cars that they ever created. Awesome, like classic sports car, rear-wheel drive, which is what everybody wants. And then you add on top of that Honda reliability. I mean, that's just a recipe for success. But other than that, you're like, okay, well, it's an old car. Like, how can it possibly be that good? Well, for a few reasons. It looks amazing. I mean, this is a car that could come out today and it would still look good, right? Okay, maybe some of it is a little dated, like maybe the headlights, they could be upgraded, with the whole LED thing going on now. But for the most part, the body lines are very good, nice and curvy. This is something that you could see at the very least coming out maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, which is pretty awesome. Let's go ahead and step inside the car. So one of the coolest things about this car is the incredibly driver-oriented seating position you have. So if you can see in the driver's seat, literally every control is pointed right at me. If you're a passenger, you get no controls. Everything is here, right? So these are all my environmental controls. And over here, this is all my radio controls. Even though like the radio is down here, the idea behind these radio controls, it seems super redundant, because even though the radio is right here, is that when you're driving, you don't want to be reaching down and looking at your radio here. You want to be able to, like, oh, I want to change the channel, or raise the volume, like boom, right there, right? Cool stuff. Now, I've outfitted mine with a modified DCI controller, so these controls still work for me. I can hit this to actually change the track from my phone that's Bluetooth connected to my radio. Now, we have to talk about the shifter. This is probably one of the biggest reasons why the S2000 is so coveted. This is largely considered one of the best transmissions, essentially, to ever be released. Mine is okay. For an S2000, mine is okay. But if you compare it to pretty much any other car out there, it's super mechanical, very clicky, super direct. You know exactly what gear you're in when you're shifting, and like for the most part, it's pretty short too. And this is stock. Granted, you can get short shifter kits for this car, but you don't really need it. This is a short shift, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then reverse. So very mechanically feeling, very good. One of the best transmissions ever made. And to be honest, it kind of spoils me because, as you all know, I have an M2 competition in manual, and it's just not as good as this. And part of me, honestly, it's the difference is staggering to the point where I kind of wish I got a DCT in the M2 competition. But at the end of the day, I still have this, so it's fine. Let's go on and talk about the convertible ragtop. You know, for a car like this is one of the few cars where it's, you know, it's electronic. You know, it's not manual. You know, like Miatas now, you have to like pull it back and then like twist your body and push it down and all that stuff. No, this, you know, like as long as your e-brake is up, you can, you know, just unlatch these, and it takes like 5 seconds to pull down. So pretty good, you know. The thing about the S2000 though, however, for all the good parts, you know, there are some downsides to it. Trying to find a clean, you know, non-modified stock, low mileage S2000 is getting more and more rare, and they're getting more expensive too. Like you'll be seeing cars like what I've been seeing a lot more recently are low mileage AP1s, and they all have like 30,000 miles or 20,000 miles, and you're like, cool, that's really low mileage, but they're going for like $35,000, and you're like, whoa, this is a 20-year-old car, and if you took that same amount of money, you could buy a brand new 2020 Civic Type R, right? And that Type R is going to have more horsepower, it's more practical, you know, manual transmission in that is almost as good. It's really good actually in the Civic Type R. And you're like, why would I pay that kind of money for a 20-year-old car that doesn't have like Apple CarPlay? You know, it doesn't come with traction control. You kind of wonder, like, why? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And to be perfectly honest, I actually kind of agree in that sense. I personally would not pay $35,000 for an AP1, even if it had like 25,000 miles on it. That just doesn't make too much sense for me. And while yes, it's great to have like an S2000 that is that low mileage, and if you have that kind of money and you want to make that decision, that is totally fine. That's up to you. Me personally, that's not really a decision I want to make. $20,000 for me was my limit. I got mine with 58,000 miles on the odometer, which is honestly, you know, for a 13-year-old car, that's really, really low mileage. You know, if you think about it, if you take like average driving per year, people drive about 10 to 12,000 miles per year. That means that at 5 years, the car should have had already 60,000 miles on it. You're almost tripling that number, and the car doesn't even have 60,000 miles on it. Now, I've had this car for about 2 years, and it's just below 69,000 miles on it. So 2 years, I've driven about 10,000 miles. You know, I keep this car relatively low mileage as well. That's largely because this car is my main track car. You know, the M2 competition, as you guys know, is actually my daily, which is, you know, kind of weird to think, but the M2 is more practical, it's got more creature comforts, things like that. But yeah, so I bought this at $20,000, came with the OEM hardtop, which I then sold. Technically means I got this car at $17,000, which, you know, I'd say is a pretty good deal. But anyways, some of the other downsides to the Honda S2000. It is only a 2-seater. You know, if you look now, there are even Porsches out there in the Roadster configuration like this, which still have 4 seats. Now, how usable are they? Yeah, it's kind of questionable. But like the S2000, just like the Miata, only has 2 seats. It's not super practical. Now, trunk space isn't terrible. You know, this is still a great grocery getter. It's totally fine in that regard. You know, if you want to take more than one other person, it kind of sucks. You know, like, and that's why for me, this is my track car, not my daily. Some of the other downsides, well, I mean, I don't know if you would consider this a downside. Some people would. At least from years 99 till 2005, this car had no traction control. 0 traction control. There was no option to turn it on or off. It just didn't even have it. You know, that's kind of cool because you're just like, well, race car, you know, I don't need traction control. But if you're driving it on the daily streets, and if, let's say, it's just the rain, or if you hit like like a gravel patch or something like that, it is up to you as a driver to make sure you don't spin out or crash or anything like that. And for a lot of people nowadays, because traction control has gotten so good to the point where it effectively drives the car for you when something like that happens, a lot of people don't know how to handle their car when that happens, you know, when you're hydroplaning. But yeah, things like that can definitely happen. So that can be a downside. So if you're the kind of driver that either as a young driver, like you know, you're like 20 or you just got your license, and your experience with cars has always been with a car that has traction control, that might be a little bit surprise to you. You know, a lot of people talk about like, oh, these cars have snap oversteer, and a lot of it is really just because if you're going hard on a turn and you're on the throttle and then you lift, physics happens. Weight on the front, less weight on the back. You start spinning in the direction that you're turning. A lot of people don't expect that, and they call that snap oversteer. This is not a car that is easily driftable. You can do it. There are definitely people who drift S2000s, but for the amateur, compared to, let's say, the BRZ or the the BRZ or the M2 competition, both of those cars, for a novice, drifting is actually quite simple, or power sliding if you want to. So that can be kind of a downside. One of the other downsides to the S2000 is it's not very friendly for tall people. I'm 6'3", and I'm honestly a little too tall for this car. My legs are really, really long, so the stock seat is all the way back. My legs are still a little bit cramped. I don't really have enough room in this car, so even though I absolutely love this car, I'm just too tall for it. My knees hit the steering wheel, you know, and then there's the other downside. The steering wheel is non-adjustable. It is a fixed place steering wheel. You cannot adjust it. It kind of sucks, and I feel like it was a bit of an oversight. A mechanism like that does actually add weight, and this car was designed effectively to be like a street legal race car. You know, there are solutions to that. Like, I am going to be getting new aftermarket seats. I know you guys are like, wait, I thought you already had aftermarket seats, the Sparkos. I actually ended up selling them because I need something that sits lower. I am too tall, which means I can't track this car because I don't pass the broomstick test. And so I am going to be getting a roll bar installed. That's going to be coming, not anytime soon. But I did purchase myself, at least for the driver's side, a Recaro pole position, which does sit lower than the Sparkos did. That should help me out quite a bit. And kind of finally, the last, kind of real downside. Honestly, it is old. You can kind of feel it. It's a fantastic car, and I absolutely love it. But it is getting kind of old. It is not as comfortable to drive as my M2 competition. I love my M2, but I love the S2000, but I also love the M2. I love how comfortable it is. And if I'm going to choose between the two cars driving a few hours away, I'm going to choose the M2. It has more comfortable seats, better lumbar positioning. It's got heated seats. It's a comfier ride, like, significantly. Sure, I do have coilovers on this car, but even then, compared to stock, M2 is significantly more comfortable. So it kind of brings that down to the main question: should you buy an S2000? If you want a car that is super, super raw, where you feel really, really connected to the road, if you want a car that just completely speaks to you as a driver when you're driving, twisty mountain roads or on the track, or if you decide to autocross, if you want that, get the S2000. There are examples of S2000s out there. If you want a purely track car, you don't need something with low miles. I mean, it's a Honda, right? And this is a Honda from the late 90s, which means it's going to last forever as long as you take care of it. I mean, we have people on the S2000 forums that have hit 300,000 miles. If you get a S2000 that's been unmolested, that has 100,000 miles on it, you still have 200,000 miles to go. It is basically like buying a brand new car. Those cars can be found for $10,000 to $15,000. That's really not that bad. So if you want something that's like just a pure weekend track car, get the S2000. It is so worth it. These cars are so much fun. However, if you're the kind of person who just kind of wants to like drive around in a cool car, don't really care about taking twisty mountain roads on the weekends or doing track days on the weekends, or trying to squeeze out every bit of performance of a really, really nice inline four naturally aspirated, at least for me, 2.2 liter engine, no, don't buy the S2000. There are plenty of other cars out there for relatively the same price that can kind of do the same thing. Honestly, like the new BRZ. You can get a used BRZ with less miles for 20,000 miles for 20 grand, right? And that's less than half the miles that I bought the S2000 for the same price. I mean, I sold my BRZ, and it had 25,000 miles on it for 17,000. You know, that's a great price. And honestly, the BRZ is a more comfortable car. It handles very, very well. I actually do miss that car. It's a great car. It handles really well and it looks really cool. You know, if you just want a cool looking car to cruise around in, get the BRZ. It's going to be a lot more comfortable. If you buy new, they all have like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, I think, which is really nice. I kind of wish I had that when I got mine. But yeah, so that's gonna be it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry it wasn't any sort of install or anything like that, but I just wanted to kind of talk about this car a little bit, and there'll be some changes coming. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all on the next one.